Hello, welcome to CLSB Politics. Sean Briscoe speaking. So today I kind of went down the rabbit hole on a research project. I was wondering why, rural America votes the way they do, right? Why do they vote Republican? You see these pictures of all these farmers that are really angry about these tariffs, these soybean farmers that can't sell their products overseas anymore. And they all voted for Trump. If they didn't all vote for Trump, I would say 90%, right? So I started, doing some research on what these farmers really look like. And one third of them, and honestly, the wealthiest 30% of them, are corporate farms, which got me thinking. These guys actually know what, not that all farmers know about profit and loss, right? It's literally how they live. But corporate farms have the administrative institutions to know what a spreadsheet does, right? They understand profit and loss statements better than, anyone, because they bring all the corporate and, understanding into that industry. So I was like, what in the world would they be thinking to vote, the way they do? So my goal in this whole project was I wanted to understand why rural corporate farms support trade tariffs that appear to harm their export and bottom line, right? Tariffs often reduce demands on U.S. agriculture exports, yet many rural voters support them. I just want to understand why, right? That's the goal of this video. Why are they doing this? You know, um, a good bit of it comes down to political identity. Most corporate farms are based on conservative Republican leaning regions, right? The big red spots. And I have some pretty maps to show you here in a little bit that'll explain all that. Tariffs, especially under the Trump administration, and we saw this in 2018 as well, are seen as patriotic, right? That's what the media in rural America says. It's patriotic to protect the American interests, America. And support tariffs becomes a symbolic act of loyalty, aligning with national pride, party identity. Republicans protecting America. And that's their pitch. That's how they, move their that's their sell. Well, the thing about these corporate entities is that they can read a history book. They know what Congress is going to do, right? They've seen this movie before. And what they rely upon are federal subsidies to offset export losses, right? So going back to 2018, like the movie they've seen before, right? Tariffs related losses were offset by federal bailout programs like the market, I think they called the market facilitation program of 2018-2020, right? Large farms received the majority of these payments, right? The corporate, large, well organized, well lawyered, with the consultant firms that get them all their money from the feds, with the lobbyist groups, right? This is not a mom and pop. This is not the family farm. These are large institutional corporations. Well, large farms received the majority of these payments. Many corporate producers ended up financially ahead due to these subsidies. How did they do that? Well, if you've seen this movie before, right? And you've got the resources to buy media and and create a PAC, and all this dark money can go into radio and television in rural America and broadcast out just complete BS, like total lies. And after 40 to 50 years of that, they can make anyone believe anything. Because this is the problem, right? If the voter today is wrong, then that means their parents were wrong and their parents were wrong. So what the Democrats are doing, or the wall they're running into, is that they're having to convince a body of voters that grandpa was an idiot. It's a hard sell. However truthful it might be, it's a hard sell. And these corporations know that, right? So they just double down, right? So if they know they're going to get bailed out, right? They reduce their inputs, which means hired personnel, equipment, all the things, right? And unless there's a tax reason to keep the equipment, right? They're going to get rid of everything on their ledger that's pulling money out of the company, because they know they're going to get free money from Congress. Democrats too. Democrats in Congress will vote for it too, because nobody's going to want to harm the family farm, right? It's an institution of America, the family farm. That's what you always hear, family farm. That is a antique of 100 years ago for understanding how the farm industry works today. But it's a talking point that's just like the MSNBC and CNN and Fox News and all of them will bank on, right? Oh, you're going, why didn't you vote for the farm subsidies? No, it should just be, corporate growers subsidy is what it should be called. I mean, they're not a family farm, right? So the result is, since they know Congress is going to bail them out, the result of these corporate entities controlling media and pushing this agenda, right, is that because they're going to get the bailout, there'll be less economic pain, and their bottom line will be fatter, so they can then buy more political support, fund more candidates, right? That's the result of the scenario that we've already seen play out multiple times and will play out again, right? So real quick, before I continue this rant, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. I have a website, CLSP Politics. If you're looking to run for office, you can reach me there at Sean@clsppolitics.com. You can also go to my YouTube, Blue Sky, Substack, Instagram, TikTok. I'm on all those platforms. If you'd like to become a paid member of my Substack, you'll see interviews and papers and articles before everybody. And that's $5 a month. Pretty reasonable. It's a cup of coffee. And if you'd like just to donate to the YouTube channel for all the work that I do, there's a PayPal on my YouTube channel, and you can find the PayPal right here. So yeah, this is another way you can support this channel, right? And so we're gonna move on now. All right, market power and consolidation, right? So when we think of, like, so basically what happens is these corporate farms are able to basically, they're able to get, like, okay, so they're the corporations, right? They have deeper pockets than everybody else. So when the mom and pop family farms, the ones we're actually trying to help out, have trouble, right? They can't survive a growing season with no sales, right? That's not how they're built. But corporate farms have deeper pockets. They can take the hit. Oh, it's a few points off their margin, whatever. So they have to wait 2 years for Congress to reimburse them. They're still going to get the money. The banks will give them the loans because they're a large corporation. They have assets, right, that aren't the family farm. They have stocks. They can sell more stocks. They can survive. Family farms cannot. So when these corporations see these family farms get into trouble, they're kind of like the Borg from Star Trek, right? They resistance is futile, and they will just absorb all of those family farms into their corporate entity. It happens all the time. Sometimes it's they do it together as in coordination with the family. The family will incorporate and then incorporate with that corporation. Sometimes that happens that way. Most times it's just they take it. So this is back in 2012, the farms operated by corporations in America, right? This is actually one of the most up-to-date maps I could find online, which was kind of sad. And then I built my own, right? So back before I got paid to count votes and do stuff, I used to do GIS mapping and deal with large data systems. And so I took what the Department of Agriculture had and mapped for corporate farms and mapped it as of 2024, right? And this is what I got. And if you think about, some states that just vote Republican beyond reason, right? Why would they do that? West Virginia has more people on Medicaid and Medicare than any other state by percentage of population, right? Kentucky is going to lose more rural hospitals because of that big, beautiful nonsense bill that they did, right? And why would they do that? Tennessee also voting against their interests, also going to lose a lot of farms, and a lot of family farms are going to go down, and a lot of hospitals, right? They're not voting. There's a ton of people on Medicaid, Medicare there. They're not voting the way one would think, right? No, never mind. I'd like to spend $2,500 more a month on healthcare. That's something my budget can afford, right? No. Well, you got to look at what the industries are in these states, right? They're agriculture states. Well, who's controlling their media? Who's buying the radio spots? Who's got the money to buy the radio spots? Yeah. Two guesses. It ain't the family farm. This is wheat production, which I kind of found kind of interesting, but also pretty dated. Like I said, I couldn't find any map for 2024. I had to make my own. And this is, of course, how people vote, right? And I wanted to go back to talking about how these bailouts are financed, right? So the blue dots are where most of the capital in this country is generated, right? And the red dots are mostly rural areas. I mean, West Texas, there is some oil and gas and power and stuff. And, Montana's also got some of that. And there's a couple of places that do generate quite a bit of wealth, but they are the exception to the rule, right? The rest of them are agriculture, and which is important. Soybean, corn, wheat, things like that. Very, very important. But I noticed that they all vote red, right? That's been the big thing. And why I started asking this question in the first place. So they vote red because at the end of the day, the big agribusinesses can withstand that short-term loss. The family farms can't. Tariffs will hurt smaller competitors more, leading to industry consolidation. Large farms gain market share, storage advantages, and future leverages against those very same politicians that have to carry the water of whatever special interests are owning them at that time. So these tariffs that are effectively paid for by the blue cities strengthen corporate dominance in agriculture. That's what's happening. It's not what they meant to do. I mean, I'm sure it's what the corporate, big agribusiness is meant to do, That's not what the Democrats in Congress meant to do. They meant to help the farmers, not the big giant Uber agribusinesses, you know? And that wasn't what they originally did, right? So the ideological framing of fair trade versus free trade, right? That's like their go-to. That's what they talk about. And so the supporters frame tariffs as fighting against unfair foreign competition, right? Isn't that what it's all about? But they don't oppose trade itself. They like trade, but tariffs are good because it fights against unfair competition. And in a lot of ways, that's true. That's the problem with these lies. They're built around a nugget of truth, you know? And the messaging that you'll get from the GOP is we're not against trade, we're against being cheated. But all countries protect their industries, right? The narrative reinforces long-term confidence that tariffs will bring fairer deals to protect U.S. sovereignty, right? That's the end result. Really, it's just corporate America being greedy and moving their companies overseas so that they can get cheaper labor, right? It's all about the money. None of this has anything to do with America and everything to do with the money these corporations can make, and then what they do is they leverage this into, wait for it, that's right, cultural and media influence. The conservative media frames these tariffs as patriotic stands against China and globalization. Many rural Americans view globalism as a threat to their livelihoods and values. And tariffs become part of a broader anti-globalist, pro-American narrative, right? That's literally their spiel. And that's what you hear on Fox News all the time. All the time. That's what you hear. Right? And they use, all that media for political leverage and reciprocity, and so they support tariffs, builds goodwill with policymakers, controlling subsidies, tax breaks, and regulations. Maintaining loyalty ensures access to favorable policies, right? And of course, all of these politicians are paid for by those corporations, which can give unlimited money thanks to Citizens United. The tariffs in this context are part of a broader political strategy, not just an economic issue, right? Right. It's kind of that whole buy American thing, which is great, but we don't make electronics in America, really. We don't. I mean, unless it's a F-35 or something, which BT dubs, most of the components in that F-35 aren't made in America. So yeah, they definitely, so you're starting to see that the circle has started, right? They've started the circle, and we're going to come back around. But real quick, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to this channel. You can check me out on any of these platforms. So the core paradox is this, right? That circle that I was just talking about. This is kind of when I had that aha moment when I was doing my research. So the economic losses are offset or temporary, right? Because it's a tariff. They don't last forever. They're negotiated away, right? So for these corporate entities and these politicians, political and cultural alignment matter more than short-term profits because they have deeper pockets. So the tariffs can even reinforce market power and political influence, right? Because they're saying, the voters were convinced this is what needed to be done, then the politicians did it, right? So ultimately, the support reflects a blend of economics, ideology, and identity, right? Because now they're on Team America, and so that's kind of the grift of the whole thing, So my key takeaway was pretty clear. The socialism that they fight against, that bad word they don't like to use, socialism, is a government bailout, right? And that government bailout is are the subsidies that cushion the blow, the government, aid that mitigates the real damage that's being done by the Republican policies. Uh, so that power dynamic, the power dynamic in this thing is this issue is tariff strength and corporate consolidation, messaging, the freedom of patriotism, not protectionism, to win the vote, and they aligning with the policymakers. They bring long-term gain, right, to those that are involved, and so those subsidies are paid by debt and by those blue cities, right? Those economic engines in the countries. They're the cities, not the farms, not the rural districts that are gerrymandered to hell, where all these Republicans actually operate, right? This debt is going to be carried by the majority of the population, which live in the cities, that are the economic engines, that are also blue. So these cities are all progressive and blue and democratically controlled. And they're the ones footing the bill so that these Republicans can stay in power. The GOP leverages the resources of these democratically controlled cities to offset their tariff policies that harm their own supporters. The gerrymandering pulls political strength from the cities and gives it to those rural voters that are owned and operated over 50 years of media. It's what they know. It's the only thing they know because it's the only voice that's been out there. Democrats haven't done any talk radio in rural America. You guys remember Air America? I think it was like back in 06, 07. Went out of business in a couple of years. Love you, Al Franken. Shout out to Al Franken. But yeah, it didn't make it but a minute. Whereas, because they weren't being bankrolled the way these corporate entities bankroll talk radio in rural America. The blue companies out there that aren't really blue, they didn't have the vested interest. There was no gain because the cities are already blue, right? And there's no one that's going to bankroll liberal radio because it would effectively be a nonprofit, right? I can't imagine what companies would sell advertisements in rural America on a liberal radio station, and that's pretty sad, right? So, I mean, that's kind of where it's at. The subsidizing these rural industries put off the pain that the GOP policies would actually put onto the voters and continue the GOP's grip on these communities, bankrolled all by the blue cities. They are unaware of the extent of the damage being done, therefore continue to vote against their best interests because their interests are the pain is not where it belongs, right? Our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, are going to be paying off the debt of these policies because it's all being paid by debt. And that's kind of where I'm at. It's a circle, and it's been perpetuated for the last 50 years, and it's only getting stronger. I'll have a follow up this video with some solutions, but I'm still working on that. All right. Well, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. If you're thinking about running for office, you can go to my website, clsbpolitics.com. If you want to go, you can check me out on YouTube, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. On YouTube, I have a PayPal link. Please donate. We need all the support we can get. And on Substack, you can become a $5 a month member of my Substack group. So, all right, everybody. Hope everyone enjoyed this show, and I will talk to you guys later.